And welcome back. Today we continue with the creation of our card game. I just rushed a little bit today, sorry, because it will be a very long tutorial, so I'll try to do as fast as possible, lots to talk about. And the theme of the game that you voted is anime robots, and therefore, since usually on this animation the robots are unique, we don't want to have duplicated cards in our game. Therefore, to avoid this, we are going to create a new array that we will call it a dealer. So, I mean, it's not called dealer, but just to, when I explain about this, it's when I refer to dealer, is the new array where we have a stock all the cards in the game. And what we're going to do is at the beginning of the game, we put all the cards in the dealer deck. And from there, when the game starts, the dealer gives like 10 cards to each player. We will start to have like 24 cards on the deck of the dealer, and in this way every player will have only 10 cards, 4 cards will be left out, and no one really knows which cards has the opponent and also themselves until the very end. In this way the game will be a little bit difficult to predict, and therefore will be a little bit more strategic, the fact that you have to pick the card or don't pick a card when you play. So let's get started, and before we start with new things, I'm going to show you let's say what problem that we have in the old version that we need to fix. It's just a little mistake, but I didn't have time to do the last time because the video was too long. So when we have a new player ready here, in this case player 2 has created the cards, and then they use the first card. What we have here, that with the player number 1, I put the new cards on my hand, and I can drag as usual my cards, but I can also drag the cards of player number 2. So that's the issue. And then when I pass the turn, the player number 2 can of course drag his own cards and also the cards of the opponent. So first of all, we need to put something to stop this behavior, and then we go after to move towards the new things that I'll talk about at the beginning of the video. So just going on our event sheet here, and let's make it start everything, all the fix that we have to do. We start adding a new function here, and on function we call it stop drag drop. Stop drag and drop. Okay, inside here we say that when we call this function here, card drag and drop set enable, we say disable. So every time that this function is called, it will disable all the cards. Then after we make another sub event, and we say as a condition, if the card compare instance variable player number equals to turn, and also put another condition, say together, if the card compare instance variable slot equals different from 0, not equal to 0, then what you do? Then you enable the drag and drop. I just finished everything, and then we're going to explain you. Then on start of layout, this one maybe I put it here, just have a mind of the sequence of the game. And we add in the new action in the start of the layout, where we call the function that we just created, that is stop drag and drop. Okay, then we go to call the function as well inside our triple filter here, where we have this condition when the card start drag and drop. All inside this group here, we're going to copy the same function inside here. Okay, that is good. Nothing else to add for this. And what's happening that at the beginning of the game, when I start the layout after creating the decks, everything for the player, we call start drag and drop, and with this one we're going to disable all the drag and drop for every player. And then of course if the player turn is on and the card is not on the slot number 0, then it's going to enable the card. So basically, if we, same thing is going to happen here. When we pass the turn, when we click take the card from the deck, we enable the card at the same condition because the card is on the deck. So it doesn't have the slot number yet. So after the card has been placed on the slot of our hand, then is able the player to drag and drop it. So that's it. In this way, we are able to decide that only the cards that are matching the turn of the player and the cards that are on the actually on the slot or on the hand of the player that is matching the turn are able to be drag and drop. All the others are disabled here. So in this way, we fix the problem. Now we're going to double check if everything is fine. Okay. So this player 1, the plays his card. Player 2, sorry. This is player number 1. I can, of course, drag my cards. And I can also try here, but I'm not able to drag the cards of my opponent, as well as the one on the deck. When I pass turn, same thing happens here. Player number 2 can use the card, but can't take any more the cards of player number 1. So this one is fixed. Now we can go on with the new things. So we start going up here, and now our array deck, we're going to change player number to 0. This will be now the default array, the one that is already in the game before we start, before we create anything else, will be the array of our dealer. And then we're going to here to duplicate these two conditions here. This one is where we create a second array for the player number 2, and we give the value or the instance variable to player number 2. In this way, we're going to duplicate these events and change these to player number 1. So after starting with the array deck of the dealer that's already in default by in the game, we create straight away the array deck for the player number 1, giving the right value, the instance variable, and then after all, player number 2. I remember that as construct works, when I'm going to create this array deck and then assign the value to as an instance variable, this is referring to this. But when I'm going to create a new array, this will refer only to this array. So nothing will refer to this or this one here. So just a little bit of maybe confusion the first time, but keep in mind how it works. Otherwise, it might mess up all your code. Okay, just another thing you want to do is we create a new variable to add here. And I call it total cards. This is 24, and this number of cards, of unique cards available in the game. So if now we just you can use this as constant, but in case you want to change every game, increase or reduce this number of cards for any reason, if it's a variable, of course you can alter this value, and therefore you can alter the value of the array deck of the dealer, because now we're going to assign this value to the dealer. To do this, I just go at the very beginning here. I duplicate this event, but I can just create from scratch. I go back and I'm going to say set size width to 24. I remember that the width included counting exactly how many slots there are in the array. Is not including the number 0 to 24, but 1 to 24. So the slot 0 is counted as a 1 slot. So these are how many slots. So 24, item depth 1, it's fine. So since these are it's at the very beginning, this of course is going to refer only to the array deck of the dealer. Then when I create this second array here for the player number 1, this action is going to refer to this array here, And then it's, again, as I explained before, this action here is going to refer to the array for player number 2. So everything should be quite straightforward, but just in case I prefer to repeat to make sure that you understand well. Okay, at this stage I'm going to import new cards because we have only 10 cards in our game and need to have other 14 cards. So right click, import frames from file, and I'm going to select all these new frames. I haven't done yet the cards for the robots. I start to do some, but it will take a little bit of time. So for now, we keep using the number. So this done, and now we have 24 cards available for the dealer to use and to give to all the players. Now we need to create a new event sheet, and we call it ES cards database. And in this way, everything I'm going to create in this event sheet is not related to any layout, but I will include it inside the event sheet board. So here I can do right click, include event sheet, and since there is only one option. If you have more than one, you can of course choose which one you want to include. And that means that when this layout, this including the event sheet board, is starting, it will also load all the condition, events, and action that are present in this event sheet here. So it's good for you if you want to organize and keep things separated. In this case, I'm going to use this event sheet just to load the cards on the database in the future, not in this tutorial, for the dealer with all the values and so on. And then I keep a little bit cleaner this other event sheet here with the code. So this is just purely focusing on the game, while this is just more on the database information. So now here we create a new function, and we call it import cards. Okay, and on the event sheet here, on start to layout, we call the new function import cards, and we drag it, and we put this after the wait 1 second here. So basically, after we create all our new arrays, we give a time to the computer to set up everything, and we wait 1 second, and we give we import the new cards. Okay, at this point, actually I can put this before setting the turn, so we are sure that after the player is chosen after, because this we will see in 1 month. Okay, done this part here, we go to the call here of create deck, and we're going to delete it because we're going to create a deck inside the function that we just created here. And what are we going to do now? We add a new condition to this function call, and then we say array deck, copy paste and variable, play number equals to function dot param 0. Now I'm going to explain you 1 second. So basically these are new things of the function we haven't seen yet. When we're going to call the function, as we're going to do from here, you can pass some parameter or values anyway. These values can be called thanks to this expression here, function.parameter 0, because 0 is the first parameter we pass. If we pass five parameters, of course it will be not number 0, but will be number 4 because it's 0 index. So if you want to refer to a parameter number 5, I will put 4 if I pass 5 values. So that's the why. And then with this value here that I'm going to pass, I can filter what array I need to work on, as we did until now with player number 1 and player number 2. Now we're going to filter this, calling it player number 0. That is not to confuse with parameter 0, but it's different 0. 0 is the value of parameter 0. When we see this in one moment. We're going to add the sub event here. What we do, actually before I do this, I show you this called functions straight away. So when I call import cards, I can add the parameter 0, I give value 0. So in this case, it means I'm going to filter through the array instance variable player number, and if I put 0, it will be pick the array that has the value equals to 0, that is the array of the dealer. If I put 2 here, sorry, it will be the array of player number 2. If I put 1, it will be the array of player number 1. When I go into deal with this call to function here. So in this case, that's why there is this filtering thing, because the array deck will be picked according to the function parameter. So these are new things to learn with function. This is very useful, and we'll see more and more of this in the future. So at this point, I add this sub event, and then make a for. I don't need to put a name in this case. For 0 to array deck dot width. We know the width of the array in this case of the player number 0 will be 24 elements, but the last element is the element number 23 because 0 index, so therefore I need to put -1 if I want to put all the array. As I say in the previous videos, I can use a different kind of loop, the one that is created up just for the array, but if I want to do for any reason a different range or change this loop for any reason in the future, in this way it's easier rather than go to change too much stuff. Okay, at this point here, as action, I'm going to say array deck set at x, and the value is the loop index that we're doing now, loop index, and the value they're going to pass is loop index. I will just show you from where, so it's easier. You get why I'm doing this. From the function we have create deck. So basically we were before looping through the deck of the player to create the cards. Now we don't create anymore the cards from the players because we create on the dealer side, and then we distribute later. So we're going to basically take this one here, copy and paste it here. That's what we're going to do. So we loop on the array deck of the dealer. That can be 24 at the beginning of the game because we set up here to 24, but it might change in the future if you want to change for some reason during the game. So that's why we put it this way, because you might call the function later on during the game and the array is a different size. So when I'm going to do this loop index, when I'm going to add the values at first element, second element, so on, which value I'm going to add? I'm going to add basically this same value, 0. So at the beginning, before I shuffle the cards, the array deck of the dealer, at the first element is element number 0, will have a value equals to 0 because the loop is index is used for both of the things. And then therefore I will have a deck that is perfectly in order from 0 to 23. That are the cards. So the cards this here from 0 to 23. And then after we're going to shuffle as usual. So we can go now back here at the event sheet card database. We leave it and we go at the event sheet board, and where we have this triple filter here, there is a function shuffle cards. I just close this for a moment. Okay, so it's easy. ShuffleDeck, sorry. I'm going to bring this out from the group. Okay, so it's not anymore inside this filter here. And I'm going to filter this with a new parameter. So I'll add another condition, ArrayDeck, compare stance variable, player number, equals to, again, function dot parameter param0. So when I'm going to call this function here, I filter again thanks to the parameter. So we go back in cards database and we create a second sub event, and we call ShuffleDeck and add the parameter 0. Okay, so from now on we're gonna, from this point we're going to call a ShuffleDeck with parameter 0, and then when this function is called we're going to filter which array we're going to shuffle thanks to the parameter 0. So it will be shuffle, in this case from this point here, only the array deck of our dealer. So all this will refer this array deck to the dealer. So we go back again here, we add another sub event, and we need to have the two conditions. Basically what we want to do after we create all the cards in the array deck for our dealer, and after that we shuffle all this card, so there will be not anymore in order from 0 to 23, but will be like, I don't know, 7, 9, 14 and so on. Then we want to take the first 10 cards and we'll give the first 10 cards to the player number 1, and the cards, the second 10 cards, so cards from cards from 0 to 9 we give to player number 1, and cards from 10 to 19 will be given to player number 2, while all the other cards will just be sitting there on the deck of the dealer, not used, and therefore the player never know until the end which card actually they have and the opponent have. Okay, in this case we need to do a little bit of complicated things, so bear with me because it's a little bit complex, but not too much. Just to explain, the concept is quite simple, but to explain a little bit difficult. So first of all, we're going to make a loop for, as usual, and we call this loop players, and we do 0 to 1. Okay, now we know that our players are called 1 and 2 as a value in our array deck, but we do use the number 0 and 1 in our loop for something that I will show you in a few minutes. But the concept is simple. At this stage we're just going to loop from player number 0 to player number 1, that is in this case the value of the loop 0, to player number 2, that is the value of the loop value number 1. So in this case we do first for player 1, and then for player 2. That's what this loop is doing. Since this something that we want to save on the events, if you don't have the full version of construct, I could do normally here another loop that is called for, name it loop cards from 1 to 10, let's say. Now let's leave it. but since we want to make a little bit save space, we put this loop inside here. It's the same thing, just to save space. But if you are confused, for the exact understanding of this tutorial, just leave a sub event in this way, and after you can compact. Now just put together to make space, as I said before. Now this second loop here, we loop the cards, so we need to loop the first 10 cards to give to the player. In this case, first we managing the player number 1, and then we do all these things for player number 1, then we go to player number 2, and we do all these things for player number 2. But when we loop the cards to give to player number 1, it's okay to say 0 to 9, loop on the array of the dealer to give the card to the player, but it's not correct to do the same loop for the player number 2, because otherwise if we leave 0 to 9 in this way, we give exactly the same cards that are being given to player number 1, also to player number 2, because we loop from 0 to 9 of the array deck of the dealer. So what we need to do is to add something from 0. Here we do plus LoopIndex, and we need to specify which LoopIndex we are referring to, because we have two LoopIndex inside each other, so we need to be precise here, don't make mistake, and write loop players. That's why we give name to these loops this time, sometimes we don't. Okay, so now we do start index 0 plus loop index or loop player. That will be 0, but it's not going to change anything. But if we multiply this by 10, and then we do exactly the same thing for this and index, what's happened? That after we complete the loop for play, okay, the first loop players we start at 0, then we're going to do this, and we start from 0 to 9, and we add the value of loop players, that is 0, multiplied by 10, that is still 0, so 0 plus 0 will be still 0. Same thing here, we add still all these expression will be 0 at the first loop of the loop players. So this loop will be normally from 0 to 9 and will be perfect for player number 1. But when this loop finish and all the conditions here are done, all the actions, and we go to increase the loop players to from 0, we're going to move to 1. This value here need to pick up the cards from number 10 to 19 for player number 2 to avoid duplicated, as I said before. And therefore loop players will be 1 multiplied 10 is 10, so this value is 10. Therefore when the second loop start, this time for player number 2, we start to pick up from card number 10 plus 0, that is 10, until 9 plus 10, 19. So it will be looped properly, and we have a perfect loop all in one condition. We can save many check that we have to do. Okay, only do loop here and then loop for player number 1, or after do all the player for loop for player number 2. In this way everything is done nicely in one go. You say space, it's more clear. It's a little bit too difficult to understand for you for the first time, but the code will be much cleaner after you do this. You get used to this stuff, no worry. So I'm going to save. And inside this loop, what we're going to do, we set up system set value of turn, and we set up turn as loop index of loop players plus 1, because as I explained before, loop players goes from 0 to 1, but at the value that we use to identify our players goes from 1 to 2. If you remember, our array deck play number is 1 or 2, because 0 is the dealer. Therefore we need to add 1 to these values 0 and 1 when we get this value, to understand which player we're talking about, because we do this for changing the turn, use the same variable to don't create another variable. So when this function is called, does all this loop, and every time this change from 0 to 1, this value change as well, from 1 to 2. And in addition to this, we call the function createDeck. So at this point, we go to create deck, and then we create a deck for the play number 1 or play number 2. Still, we need to fix that part yet, but at least this part here, it's finished. Now I need to save again. So when we go on create deck, that is inside here, just close this. As you can see, we remember you did this loop to create in the previous video the cards for the player. We don't need this anymore. We're going to get rid about this soon. And yeah, it does all this creation of the cards, the physical cards, not in the array. But now how we identify which player is which card is created? So we need to go to add the some local variable. The first one I will call it value, all numeric variable. And the second one I will call it loop cards. Both 0. We don't care because we're going to change a variable now. System set value of loop cards to LoopIndex of loop cards. Okay, this is just a shortcut. Basically, I'm going to write loop cards rather than every time LoopIndex of loop cards, just to make it easier to read the code. And then in the next one, it'll be value, and here we're going to say array deck dot at. Rather than put the loop index blah blah blah, I'm just going to write on the brackets loop cards. So it's a little bit short. Okay. Then when we call create deck, we're going to pass those parameters. Parameter number 0 will be loop cards minus, I will explain in 1 second, loop index of loop players. I could have used an instance variable for this one, local variable for this one to make it short as well, but it's okay. Just to give you an idea how you should do. I don't want to do it too long video. And then add parameter value. So in this way, of course, the second parameter number 1 is obvious. What we're going to pass is the value that it's here, the array deck of pointing at the array deck of the dealer, which card, the value of the card is passing through. In this case, like for example, if at the first lot for the first player there is a card number 5, we pass the value of 5. But here, to understand we need this to understand which loop are we talking about, because we call this function here create deck every time we want to put a card in a deck of one player. So we call this function, since it's inside this loop, 10 times, because 10 times for player number 1 and 10 times for player number 2. But now, as we did before, we're going to refer to which card to pass through as an information. The first 10 cards will be for player number 1 and the second 10 cards for player number 2. So basically we add in this loop plus, to remember to increase the card for the player, and we do the opposite here. We remove it. So this will help us to identify if the value, the cards of this loop we are doing is for the player number 1 or player number 2. Because in this case, if loop player is at 0, multiplied by 10, the value is still 0. So if the loop they're doing here from 0 to 9 is 9, we know the value to pass through is the 9 for the player number 1. But for the other loop, if it's 19, we can put the value on the array deck of player 2 as the index of 19 in the array, because the array goes from 0 to 9. It doesn't exist 19, it exists 9. So therefore, if the loop here of the player is equals to 1, then multiply by 10, it means that we are doing the second loop for the player number 2. So we need to reduce this value, the looping from 10 to 19 by 10, and therefore we get the correct value that is pointing to the array deck of player number 2. It's a little bit complicated to explain, but it's not complicated concept, so I hope it's correct. If you have any doubt at this stage for these kind of things, the best suggestion I can give you is to take pen or paper or take a notepad and write every step. So let's say loop players equals 0 at the beginning, and then after you have loop cards equals to 0 at the very beginning, then you do all this and you write down every single value you have, like a value equals and loop cards, everything. So every time you do on the paper or anyway on the notepad here, this loop, you just write down a change value at the end of every loop, and then you will understand why we're doing all this. You do all the calculation here manually. It's not too complicated to do the calculation, but if you're maybe pretty young following this tutorial, maybe your math knowledge is not very advanced, I will highly suggest you to do this, and you will understand why we do all these mechanisms. So I'm not going to do one by one all the example because it will take a long time. It's already very long, this video. So I just go on, I save here, and we go in the first event sheet, the board one. Inside the close this, we don't need. Actually, no, yeah, we need this one, create deck, sorry. And first of all, we're going to copy this local variable inside here as well, the one we created here, so we can use the same thing here, and we don't have to get mad as usual to write long code. And I'm going to remove these two first events conditions here, sorry. For now I just disable, but just I'm going to remove it. And then I'm going to say that even here I copy these two and just paste here the same height. Paste, sorry, not paste. And the value of these loop cards, of course, is not anymore loop index and so on, but I'm going to change. And what is this? This is parameter 0 is the loop of the card, and parameter 1 is the value. So let's remember this. Actually, what I suggest you here, just write down what's the parameter you're passing by, because it's easier to keep in mind every time you read the code, especially if you jump from one point to another, or if you have stopped to work at the project for a while, so you don't need to go to check what you're passing through. So as I said before, loop parameter is 0 loop cards, and parameter 1 is value, loop cards and value. Of course, this loop card will be modified according to the calculation we did before. And now we know that these values, this parameter, we're going to pass here. So loop cards will be equals to function dot parameter 0 and value will be equals to function dot parameter 1. And in this case, I avoid to write every time function dot parameter 1 rather than value. And same thing, loop cards will be much shorter than write function dot parameter 0 when I'm referring to do these values inside this function. So don't worry about other function because these two are referring only to this one. And then I'm going to do, just copy this, I'll drag and drop here. Array deck at x, by x it will be loop cards. I will give the value of value. So since we filtered these loop cards to be 0 to 9 for both player 1 and player 2, I don't have any more problem now. I can use this value and I give the value of the card that has to be like 5, 7, 14 and so on. Later on will be name of robots, but or anyway numbers that refer to the robots, but just to understand. So I think this point is clear. I can just remove this because all this shuffling of the card is happening ahead here on the deck of the dealer, and this assignment of the value in the array deck for the loop index from 0 to 9, I give a value from 0 to 9, is now different because we get the value from the cards that the dealer distribute to the players. It will be different for every player. So I can get rid of these two condition and make space. At this point I'm going to remove even this loop here because I don't need to loop again on the array deck of the player because I already looping here when I give one card at a time to each player. So I just remove this and I'm going to simplify everything here. So basically where here I can remove this, we don't need. When we give this all this card for action, I can put actually here and remove this, so we save another line if you have a free version. So when I set the animation of the frame of the card, I don't refer anymore about array deck at loop index because I don't have any loop here, so I can use this expression. So what I'm going to do is just I replace this thing expression here with a value. Okay, so of course I give to the card that has the number 5 the frame number 5. I'm referring to the frame number 5, so the value is 5. And then here for the y, if you remember the y, we use this loop index to establish the height of the cards when they're put on our deck. So to avoid this referring to loop index as well as before, since I don't have it, I'm going to replace this loop index. I leave all the rest, but only the word loop index. I'm going to replace it with loop cards. That is looping from 0 to 9. As I said before, we filter already everything and change for both players. So in this case, once again, we loop from between two players. First player get the first 10 cards, and every time you get a card, it's calling create deck and give the card to the player, create a physical card, let's say virtual card, because, and they put the proper animation on top of the deck, and they pile it, and also set the player number equals to turn, and the turn is established here. So everything works fine now at this point. Okay, so we go back here, and then in the function shuffle card, shuffle deck, sorry, we have this called this condition here to filter the text. So of course now when we shuffle the deck the first time, I remember you that we shuffle the cards here on the deck of the dealer. So we are not going to shuffle anymore the cards for the players because they already shuffled already for the dealer. It's like when you play poker and then you know the dealer shuffle the cards and then give to the players. So they don't need to shuffle again the cards. They already shuffle anyway. So I'm going to put this one and drag it inside here, inside the card deck, because we want to use this for still a little bit of time, these two areas, for our debug to see if the cards are created correctly. So the only way for us to see which cards are in the array is to use it here when we assign the frame to the cards. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And in this condition here, the turn is already filtered ahead here, because as I said before, the tone is changed in every loop. So text will be filtered with the turn, and then we set the array text data. This is just text, and we call show array, and show array will work as usual, so no problem. Okay, with this we can close. At this point inside the pass turn, if you remember inside pass turn what happened, that in the previous video we created the array deck for the second player if it's the first turn of the game. Since now we create already both the array for both players at the beginning here, we don't need all this condition anymore, and we can just get rid about it. We could in theory, the condition I just show you quickly, it just was checking if the variable first turn was to 1 at the beginning of the game, it's 1, and after, if it's 1, create the array deck for player number 2, and therefore after we change the first turn to 0 because we don't need to do it anymore. So this is not of any use to us anymore, we get rid of it. Therefore this is one good point where we start to test our code. We save and let's start. Okay, so here there is a mistake. Okay, so the problem is that basically the second player doesn't get the card properly, the values of the card, and also that those stack properly. So it should be something here when we send the parameter with the function loop cards minus loop index loop player times 10. Value seems correct. Okay, loop player is missing S. Okay, loop players. Okay, they should be correct. Now it's coming in my mind also they shouldn't call full end anymore for the first player, so I disable it because it was already all the cards out for the first player. We don't need this. Actually, we don't need even this weight here. No, actually, even here. Notice, forgot to type total cards rather than 24. I was explaining and then I got carry on. So now it should be fine, everything. Just save. Let's begin the window. Okay, so player 2 has the cards 12. That is the last card, the one on top. Player 1, sorry. Player 2 start with card number 13. That is the last one. And let's have a look. Doesn't work here, player 1, because the turn of player 2. So we start. We get the first card. Second card, 19. You can see it's correct. 13, 19, 0. Now get 17 and 18. 17, 18. Okay, then we pass the turn. And then we have 12, 11, 1, 5. Okay, so everything is working fine. as the game as usual is the same. And then sorry this video was very long. I will just cut quickly here. If you like the video, please click like and help me to share the videos around. I'm not going anymore to share much this video because it's very time consuming. So please, if you find it useful, do it for me. It's your way to say thank you me. It will be very important for me if you help in this way. Thank you. I see you in 2 weeks for the next video. Bye.